Can we have an honest conversation that I can no longer hold? A lot of us don't have a strategy problem. We have a decision making problem. I'll say it again. A lot of us don't have a strategy problem. We have a decision making problem. Let's dive into it. All right. In my years of experience in the corporate space, I had the opportunity to sit at a strategic level, okay, in corporate technology. There was one particular incident where I was reminded today about it, and it just drove me so crazy that I said I have to talk about it to explain why I say that a lot of us have decision making problem. At some point, I worked for an organization that was identified as a third party intermediary. Okay. They were basically the middleman between the supplier, between the source and the supplier. And so our job was to essentially do all the contract negotiations, manage the portfolio at a certain level, and then we basically get our cut, right? And so the organization while I was there, we service anyone from mom and pops shops all the way up to the bigger organization. Okay. That's what we did. And when I worked at the organization, we they were kind of in a transitional phase. They were not really at the startup phase, but they were not really at like, the middle phase. They were kind of transitioning into that space. And so when I came in to sit in that strategic space, there was a particular inquiry from a client that intrigued us. This particular client, actually was a few clients, wanted us to manage a level of portfolio that was complex, but in the long run was going to benefit the company overall because the organization was had done a really good job building trust, building connections, setting themselves as the number one third party intermediary on the East Coast for the services that clients are usually negotiating for. Okay. And so, worked with the team. We put together, all the good stuff. We went through discovery calls. We went to ideation phase. You name it. All preparation, use cases building. Okay. We built the use case, which was we have the interest, and this is what the return of value will look like. We had all of that put together into a nice little package. When it was time to speak with leadership, everybody was on board except for one manager. Okay, one manager. So imagine if we were a group of 10, this particular manager came out and said, while this looks good, I just want to ask how many people are actually asking for this type of product, this complex product, and how much would it cost us? Now, his question was valid. Okay, I'm not saying it's not valid. Okay, but it threw the process for a loop for a few reasons. Yes, it was a costly program or product because the level of complexity that this client or these few clients were asking for meant that we needed to build a system to support them at various levels of your portfolio. Okay. But the return on investment was higher, like way higher. Um, I'll throw out some numbers just to make sense. So if we were managing five individual clients, this one client, because of this particular product, was going to give us a product that was more than the five individual contracts that we're going to deal with. Okay. Because it's so complex, it was tailored for a particular group of clients that can afford it. Okay. Can afford it. That is why they came to the company. So, because of the manager's question, guess what happened? We came at a standstill. Even though we provided the proof of concept, we had the use cases, we had the return on investment approximately, the length of time was going to take for us to put the processes in place. This entire project was halted because the manager, who, by the way, was in charge of pricing, so he was aware of the how great this can go, asked a simple question, and the simple question was, "Are we willing to basically move our resources into this costly project for the sake of two clients. Okay. And the management simply couldn't make up their mind. That's it. The project was stalled because they couldn't make up their mind, not because they were missing evidence. I'll say it again. They were not missing evidence. We had proof of interest, we had use cases, proof that it was going to set the organization up for success because now we enter into a new territory where we're dealing with the big dogs. Yet the project was stalled because the minute that question was asked, we were unable to make decisions. Now, I'm no longer in that company. I worked in corporate for 10 years. So, I'm no longer in that space. I don't know what came about with that project. But I'm using this as an example because even though in project technology, we had all the resources to show that this was going to yield good results because management, okay, because management was unable to make a decision whether to go for it or not go for it. This opportunity was stalled, which in that season while I was there kind of left the organization sitting at a place of stagnation. Basically, that's what it was. Whether it's short term or long term, we were at a place of stagnation, and the entire mindset of the organization was, well, we do certain things well, so let's just keep doing that well in hopes that we will get more volume, aka more revenue. Then we can invest in the latter project. But there was a group of us who were like, actually, we think this big jump is worth it because it's going to set us apart. Now, I've gone in circles using this particular example because a lot of us, that's where we are. We've gone to the conferences, we paid for the coaching services, we paid for the mentorship services. We've done everything that we can to get what we think is the right strategy for us, yet we are unable to make decisions. And so at this point, I am convinced that a lot of people, in my experience, um, may lack decision making skills. That's it, may lack decision making skills because you are going to go through many seasons in life where you may not have a use case. You may not have proof of concept. You may only have the Holy Spirit. And if you can make a decision about the voice that you feel inside of you, about who you are, and take that leap of faith, you are going to be at a space of stagnation. So it doesn't matter if I offer you services. It doesn't matter if Jesus Christ comes all the way down to see you, because you are unable to make a decision, nothing gets moved. hmm Nothing gets moved. Now, in the season, God has me reading the story of David because David's leadership skills, ooh, intrigued me so much. And there was one particular scenario which I'm going to share with my people of faith, and you understand what I mean by this. Listen, when David got to the battlefield, when the Israelites were fighting, when the Israelites' army were fighting against Goliath, okay, when David got there, his decision was based on who he was, okay? Who he served in the wilderness. Because remember, he was caring for the sheep, blah, blah, blah. He had zero army skills, okay? He had zero army skills. The only confidence that he had was a God that he served. So much so that when he got to the battlefield and he saw that Goliath was terrorizing God's people, he boldly said, I will stand between you and and God's people. Like, who are you? He referred to David as an uncircumcised Philistine. That's how he referred to him. And guess what? Before he fought, he even negotiated his price. He said, what kind of price am I going to get if I defeat this man? He wasn't looking at his present circumstance. He wasn't looking at his present circumstance. He knew for sure that the moment he stood in position to fight Goliath, that the war was won. He knew that the war was won. Why? Because he knew that he wasn't going to fight on his own. He already had the return on investment. Come on. He already had the return on investment. His return on investment was every time that he needed to save a sheep, God gave him the strength to fight the bears and the lions. Okay? So he already had his proof of concept. Now, Goliath is not the same as the lion and the bears, but he already had his proof of concept, right? He already had something to show that this will work. Again, with the company, we already had proof of interest. We had a couple of clients that came to us and said, you guys are doing such a good job. Would you mind start looking into a product that diversify my portfolio because I have complex products, okay, or a complex portfolio. That's all it was, okay. And once David made the decision, he changed the trajectory of the Israelites. He changed the trajectory because he made a decision. He didn't stutter. He didn't think twice. He knew what he was facing, right? Goliath was significantly bigger, stronger, than him. He was a puny little guy who lacked zero war skills. But one thing for certain that he had confidence in God and he had the boldness and audacity. Come on, he had the boldness and audacity because he already had his return on investment in the previous seasons. Okay, I don't want to confuse you here because my message is plain and simple. Okay, you can look for all the strategies in the world. Hear me out. You can look for all the strategies in the world. If you are unable to make decisions, you are basically throwing away money because you have to just decide today. This life that we're living today, me choosing to make a video today, okay, has nothing to do with whether I have capabilities or not. Has everything to do with the voice that God has placed inside of me that I'm using as a way to speak to you. Okay. So make a decision today. And I'll throw this out. If you're unable to make a decision, that is also okay. Because, like I said, referring back to the manager that I was speaking of, it's not like he had not received results. He was really good at what he was doing. In fact, he was part of the pricing department. So when it comes to level of expertise, he was definitely the one to call the shots and say, is this worth our investment today versus tomorrow? Okay. But his stance should not have caused the project to come to a standstill. Because if we had 10 people, there were still nine other people that could have made the decision to move forward. The reason why it stalled is because other people within leadership couldn't make up their mind. They were confused, they were double minded. I mentioned something on threads recently. I said, uncertainty and clarity cannot walk alongside. You need to make a decision today and then you receive 2020 vision. I'll say it again. Uncertainty and clarity cannot walk alongside. Make a decision today and you have vision 2020. What I mean by that is it is okay to be afraid. It is okay to have questions. Either make the decision, no, this is not the right time. Yes, this is the right time. And then the strategy will follow. If you don't make a decision and you come to a standstill and then you go every season, every time looking for a different strategy when you know you need to make a decision, nothing is going to get accomplished. That's why I refer back to David because he was a young man who had made up his mind because of who God had called him to be, aka identity. We're not going to talk about that. But because who God had called him to be, he was certain that he was going to win no matter what. He didn't think about his life. He didn't think about what was in front of him. He didn't think about there's a whole army now fighting Goliath. Who am I? He said, I know the God that I serve, and I'm just going to use a stone and kill you. That's all David said. Why? He decided that he was going to win. He decided that he was going to win because God's reputation was on the line. And you know what? Maybe that's the message here. Maybe you need to figure out what is on the line. Okay? What is on the line? Is it your reputation or God's reputation? Because if it's your reputation, then maybe that's why you are unable to make a decision. But if it's God's reputation, then you know you can no longer delay because the more you delay, other people's destinies are being delayed. Come on. The longer you delay, other people's destinies are being delayed. So again, if you're lacking decision making skills, that is okay. Be honest with it. Go and speak to your father. Seek a coach and say, you know what? I have received all the strategies in the world. I know what to do. I just have a hard time because of X. I just have a hard time because I'm not confident. I just have a hard time because I simply don't know what to do. That is okay. But what I will not take is you say, I need more strategy. Now come to me, come to me, okay? Because I will gladly help you weed some of this uncertainty out. But seriously, all jokes aside, the message is simple. Make a decision today. If you don't know how to, I am here to provide steps for you, or seek somebody that you trust, that you believe in, that you feel comfortable with, that will help you get to a space that you are comfortable being uncomfortable about making the decision. Okay? Comfortable being uncomfortable about making a decision. And then remember, in the last video, I talked about do your audit in this next half of the year so that you can finish well. As you do your audit, ask yourself, really ask yourself, why am I so undecisive? Really, why am I so undecisive? Is it because I am afraid? Is it because I am a overthinker? ADHD, hello, I'm one of them. Don't worry about that. Seriously, ask yourself these genuine questions. Entertain these thoughts. And if you're a person of faith, lay them at the altar. God will give you answers. He did it for me, so I know He can do it for you. God will always give you answers. He's the best auditor in the world. So God will give you answers. If you believe in seeking counseling, feel free to do that. Your therapist, feel free to do so. But we are no longer in a season where we are sitting on strategy because we cannot make a decision today. And listen to me, okay? Listen to me. Once you make that decision, whether it goes good or bad, don't worry about that. What you need to look at is what is ahead of you. If the decision is to move forward today, keep moving forward. Don't move forward and be like Peter. Okay? You know what I'm talking about. Don't move forward and be like Lot. You know what? Lot's wife. You know what I'm talking about. Move forward, whether it's going to take a year or 10 years. That thing will come to fruition. Things are going to change only if you make a decision today. Now, I've said the word decision, you should be sick of it. But long story short, no more of the strategies. Okay. Now, if you are here and honestly you're lacking strategies, definitely invest in people who have who have the skill set to be able to do so. Hey, I'm a mentor and a strategist, so I can do that. But for my people who have had enough, I know what I'm talking about. Gone to conferences after conferences, done all of the things in the world, yet you are sitting on something that you're supposed to be moving on today. Make a decision. And the decision is simply, I'm deciding to move on today, or I am deciding to move on tomorrow. And have an accountability partner. I had an event earlier this year, and I invited a woman of God, all the way from Germany. When she came, I had worked with her for a year and a half. Okay, for a year and a half. You know that she said one word she used to describe me was that I am undecisive. And in that congregation, I had friends that had walked with me. There was actually a particular friend that had been supporting her ministry for the past 8 years. When the woman of God says, I've been working with Henrietta for a year and a half, and I can tell you that she's not undecisive and she's consistent. That friend of mine from the congregation said that's how she is. Yes, people will recognize you for your decisiveness. And that is the space that you need to be. It doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. I have made plenty of mistakes. I have made plenty of mistakes. The reason why I keep showing up, I keep trying, is because I don't see those mistakes as a determining factor of who I am. I see them as lessons to get better. I see them as a stepping stone to my next level. That is how I've treated them. So today, make a decision with the strategy. Make a decision to move forward. Make a decision to have an accountability partner. Make a decision on at least one of the strategies that you've been writing down so far. And then the rest, leave it up to life and God and see what comes out of it.